No MASKS SASK is in the news again. Yes, indeed. Last night, Global did a little hit piece on us. And you're saying, Martine, why are you laughing about that? That's because I know all publicity is good publicity. And they just threw me a giant bone, and I'm really happy they did it. We've only been at this 4 weeks, and it's the 5th piece. And it's my 3rd hit piece with Global. We got a little back and forth thing going on. They hit me, I hit them. And actually, after their first hit piece against me, to make me look like a demon who didn't want a mask, and it inspired videos made of me with devil horns. In any case, I responded and did a little piece of my own called Media Manipulation. And now they're back. In any case, I wouldn't expect anything less from them because, as I've been telling everyone quite openly, I believe Global is kind of the CV coronavirus propaganda artists. There's a lot of funny business going on. And this piece is a perfect example. What it's going to do is actually give me an opportunity to teach you how to read through the lines of what you're reading and watching. And the way they structure everything, because it's deliberate. Let's go right to it.
No Masks Saskatchewan is a growing Facebook page of anti-maskers in the province. It currently has more than 2,500 members. Joining us now is University of Regina Professor of Behavioral Psychology, Gordon Pennycook.
Okay, right off the get-go, first 10 seconds. We've got anti-mask. Anti is a derogatory term. Okay? You'll see it in every piece that's out there right now describing the likes of us. Secondly, in the first 10 seconds, they've linked us with the need for behavioral psychology. All right?
Gordon, the articles and posts in this group are firmly anti-science. They go against the suggestions and the statements of our Chief Medical Health Officer, both in the province and in the country, along with the World Health Organization. How do people find themselves in situations like this, where they are denying consensus findings and not realizing that it could be them who are in the wrong?
Okay, number 2, anti-science. No, there's no anti-science here. In fact, there's tons of science on the group. It comes in. I approve every post. I like to arrange them so that it flows. And I see all that science. We've got one guy, RB Ham. He's a science man. And he's like pretty diligent. And again, as our membership grows, we've got more people from that personal interest and expertise bringing it in. So that's wrong. The second thing he just said there was that there was consensus. There's no consensus. The World Health Organization does not make consensus. And they don't even have consensus. So, absolutely wrong. And setting no masks up on a negative frontier.
It's a difficult question. I mean, there's lots of different factors that go into that for sure. What happens, I think, is, especially when you get into a group like that, it creates an echo chamber, right? Like, it's just, you hear a lot of the same stuff, the same sort of perspective over and over again. And a lot of the narrative that you find in these sorts of groups is not just like, this is what we believe, masks don't work, blah, 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 but you shouldn't listen to anybody else. And that's why, rejecting the mainstream media and all that kind of stuff is a part of the narrative, because it means you can't listen. Not only do you have to engage with this echo chamber that you kind of obviously have some interest in, but you shouldn't engage anywhere else. And so,
when have you ever heard that? That is absolutely ridiculous. Nobody comes in a group and says you can't go anywhere else and you can't listen to anybody else. And I adamantly deny that it's an echo chamber. In fact, I am seeing all sorts of perspectives every day, because guess who also reads every comment? This is market research for me, my friends. And my job every day is to read through and learn what you're saying so that I can represent you.
listen to them, then you're not going to hear other perspectives, and you end up with pretty strong beliefs that are contrary to what scientists say and so on.
A recent study of groups like these on Facebook found the majority
What
of people
study?
in groups like the No MASKS Saskatchewan group aren't getting their news from major outlets. Instead, they're going to sites like YouTube and fringe conspiracy theory websites. How do people slowly shift their consumption towards these more extreme ends?
Now he's associated us with extremists and conspirators right in that very piece, in that one sentence.
Well, one important feature is that people don't pay as much attention to sources as journalists.
Okay, this is where I draw the line.
Researchers sort of thing like myself would want them to. Like, we've done experiments where we just literally removed the source from posts, and it has basically no impact on people's judgments. And so if you find yourself in a kind of context where you're seeing a lot of stuff from bad sources, you know, people aren't paying attention to the source that much, and they kind of take that for what it is. They think, basically people generally think that they can discern between what's true and false without using that extra information, which is who's it that's trying to give this to you, is do they have alternative motives. And so it's hard, and it's especially if you find a lot of that stuff in very like high concentrations, it would take a lot of work to kind of vet all that, and so people just don't put the effort into it.
Except I do. In fact, the woman that had a dialysis issue here in the province, a group in Calgary had come up with an article about her situation, and one of our members posted it. She contacted me and she explained that the article that he had shared was complete fabrication. It had some elements, but it wasn't correct. And in fact, her local paper up in PA had done better, and so had CTV. So what I did was I actually went in, I deleted that article, and I took the two proper articles and I made a post about that. You see, this is what I do because I published a magazine for 5 years of my life, so I'm actually pretty good at vetting sources. But good try, Mr. Pennycock.
One concern being brought up recently is the split, seeing people side strongly on either side of an ideology, whether in the case of the pandemic it's that it's the end of the world or that it's not happening at all. Is there something innate in people that makes us want to pick sides in a situation like this?
Hey, one thing I'll say is that I think that the entrenched people are the most salient, and so they draw a lot of our attention, although most people probably have pretty normal or reasonable opinions on things. But for those that are really engaged...
He's just inferred that we are not normal and we are not reasonable.
The creation of narratives, I mean, there's more of this on the rejection side because it's more kind of counter to what most people are saying in the public sphere. And so what it does is it creates a market for hearing something different. And if you start hearing all these why is no one else talking about this? It seems like,
oh my gosh, if you start hearing all new ideas, you might get some ideas. We couldn't have that.
Everybody's a sheep except for me and these people I'm talking to, and then you start feeling pretty good about yourself, and you can see how that snowballs into conspiratorial mindsets.
Self-esteem spins into conspiratorial.
People find themselves self-assured in these groups.
I think that a lot of it is kind of the opposite almost, is that grievances, people who don't feel like their perspective is common in the mainstream media or elsewhere, or that they have reservations that aren't being matched, or for the mask thing, which is just some people have a kind of visceral kind of negative reaction to seeing children wearing masks or something like that. And so if you don't have a already kind of strong belief or trust that COVID is a serious problem and that that public health officials aren't trying to delude us and so on, then it's not that far of a stretch to be I reject this, and then if you find other people that are also rejecting it, they will reinforce your kind of feeling of ostracism.
Gordon, I appreciate you helping to demystify that a little bit. I appreciate the time. We are unfortunately out of it, though.
In every aspect of this piece, he is relaying a negative. We're anti-science, anti-mask. We don't want to listen to reason. Now, what's interesting is that this behavioral psychologist should recognize that, in fact, this is nothing more than a flu. And the government statistics support that conclusion. Flu surveillance for 7 months from September till the end of March last year. And pretty much the same time from March, of course, in our state of emergency, until now. COVID is still a drop in the bucket. In any case, I thought it was important that you go through the piece with me, because the whole idea of what's going on and why we don't trust mainstream media is because of nonsense like this. For anyone who hasn't checked out the group, it is public. You can't comment or anything. But the reason I did that too is so that you could be educated on what else is out there. All I know is we're under a state of emergency, and it's not an emergency. It never was an emergency. Their AI was way off. We have 24 COVID-related deaths. 1.12 million people. Lives have been ripped apart. I can tell you, moms aren't happy after the first week of school. There's a lot of kids being pulled like weeds, just like Alberta. The problem with inconsistent information is actually largely emanating from the World Health Organization. They've flip-flopped since the get-go. The reason people are looking for alternative sources and groups like No Masks is because they're actually looking for some support. He didn't say that. He was drawing a negative to being in that group, as if it was inspiring negativity, when in fact, you go through that feed and you will see a ton of hearts and likes and very few angries. You see, what we're doing here is by talking and conversing. And honestly, it's helping me doing a little investigative reporting through this feed, because I can gather all sorts of information that I bet Global wishes they could get their hands on. In any case, we have to keep moving forward, be positive, and realize that all publicity is good publicity, because since Global ran that last night, I have 400 requests. I haven't had time to get to them. I have to vet them all. So one by one, they will happen. Stay tuned. And I'm so happy that people are paying attention. And I'd love to have you at No Masks, even if you just want to hang out and step back and learn about what's going on.